you don't have to agree on everything when you come together with other families. And it's better that you don't. You don't have to agree on the same exact curriculum for every subject and everything. What has worked the best is when these families have been able to come together with just love for our kids, love for keeping their spirits alive, and that's enough.
Hello, and welcome back for another episode of the Prenda Podcast. I'm Kelly Smith, your host for the day, founder and CEO of Prenda. And today we'll be talking to Elle Rowley. Elle is the host of the show Down the Well, founder of the award-winning baby carrier company Solly Baby, and partner at Levin Capital, a private equity fund focusing primarily on female and family-owned businesses. She lives in Bonsall, California with her husband and 4 children on a backyard farm with a little barn that they have turned into a one-room schoolhouse for the community. We're going to have a great conversation talking about Elle's personal journey through school and entrepreneurship, but also what she's done for her own children and kids in her community as they've created schools and really opened the door for a curiosity-led experience. So I'm really excited to dive in with Elle, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Elle Rowley, thank you for being here on the Prenda Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So excited to have this conversation. Your story is inspiring to me, and I think it's going to inspire a lot of people. So I'm excited to get into it. Let's start, as far back as you want to go. Sometimes I tell stories from kindergarten, like my personal kindergarten, but your website has this funny little quote that says this is a quote from your website, barely graduated high school. And I would love to just kind of talk about you as a young learner, and we'll get into kind of all the great things that you've done after that. But can you kind of take us back in time and give us a feel for what that was like?
Yeah, sure. So I liked elementary school, did well, kind of peaked in elementary school academically for the traditional school system, I'd say. And then middle school and high school, I just started to, I don't know if the model, it was just like a square peg in a round hole. All of a sudden, it didn't work. And of course, I didn't have the awareness or understanding to know what was really happening. And so I thought, I can't keep up anymore. I'm not smart enough for this. I knew I had smarts, but I was like, it's not here. Those smarts don't work here. Maybe, I don't know. I heard like the phrase street smarts. I'm like, maybe that's it. I would just look for any excuse to not go to school, to stay home, watch TV, do whatever. But I also started reading. I was always a voracious reader, and I started staying home to read a lot. And so my mom kind of didn't know what to do with me because she's like, well, you're reading Les Mis, but you're failing PE. Like, how does this work together? I don't know what to do with this girl. And I'm grateful she just gave me, some freedom to figure it out. But yeah, I really struggled academically in high school. I had to do night school. I don't know. I should look up on my transcript sometime to see how low my GPA was, but I think it was like a 2 point something. But luckily I had older siblings who were in college, and that gave me a little bit of vision for like, there are other ways of learning. There are other models, and maybe this one just isn't for me. And so I knew that I had it in my head that I was going to go to college. Of course, I couldn't get into any school except a community college. And so I did. And then being able to craft my schedule and choose classes that I was interested in, like I killed it. Then I was able to get scholarships in college. And like I finally found a little more of my flow there. Now looking back, it's interesting. I'm like, well, I have some ADHD. I have a different learning style. I needed to be more hands-on. I needed better teachers who really were engaged and passionate about what they were teaching. I needed good books. I needed to be able to write more in a way that was interesting to me. And so then I marry my husband, and he has a super similar story, like very, very similar story. And so we knew that we would want to do something different with our kids. And we didn't really know exactly what that was going to be, but we just knew, hey, we had a different learning style, and our kids will most likely have a different learning style. Also, this world is so big and amazing, and there's so much that we can do now. The internet, just like we knew that the traditional public school system it has its place. It has a lot of really good things about it. I'm grateful for it, but the potential for where education could be, and what it can be now, we just knew that there was something more. And so, now we have a 16-year-old, a 14, 11, and 8-year-old, and we have done all the things. We have tried all the things, and I think while some people would look at that and say, you guys are, like haven't figured it out. You're inconsistent. You're ruining your kids, by all the changes. I feel like, no parent feels like they've nailed it. But I feel like we have looked around every year and said, what are the best resources? What resources do we have available to us? What do our kids need right now? And done our best to fill those gaps or to meet those. It has been amazing. I don't know. Now
So great.
we can go into this in this barn right now where we've had a classroom and next door is another classroom. We've done a lot of
Yeah.
different things, but it's been
I
a cool
definitely want
journey.
to We definitely want to tell that story because what you've built is incredible. And I think our listeners are going to love it. I mean, just to understand the picture of this. But yeah, let's like kind of going back in time. I think one thing that's miraculous about this story, because I hear versions of the story a lot where, the square peg and the round hole or vice versa. And it's just not fitting. But I think for many people, that feels to them like a verdict on them and their value and their worth and their potential and their capability. And it sounds like somehow miraculously, that's not the message you got from all of that. It was more of like, I guess this isn't my place, but you were able to see kind of over the walls and experience the whole thing, which is life is a lot more than just, being here in this classroom and doing these things that the teachers are asking me to do. So I'm amazed with that. I don't know. It sounds like you had some good mentorship, family, siblings, others, but can you point to other reasons why, or were you just sort of a born entrepreneur that maybe just didn't allow the rules around you to kind of define your own self-perception? Because I think that's a real big problem. It happens a lot for young people.
Yeah, one, I'm glad that you picked up on the mentorship because I should speak to that a little bit more. That I have these two sisters who, when they were in college, and my oldest sister, who's not as like academic traditionally, but all three of them, it's three girls, three boys, and then me and my family. And those three sisters, they went off to college and lived on their own. So, years before me, and they would send me home books. Like my oldest sister sent me home and Anna Green Gables to me, and that like changed my life. That book changed my life in 5th grade. Like it's not an overstatement to say that. It really changed me at my core. And then my sister Liz sent me Pride and Prejudice, and I just kept going back at it. I didn't get it. The language was too hard, but I just kept coming back to it. And that I really owe so much to my sisters for
Yeah.
their mentorship through those years. They gave me that vision. I wouldn't have figured that out on my own.
It's amazing because great literature, both of these obviously are classics, but also distinguished by strong female leads, right? Like kind of that spunky Elizabeth Bennet or Anne that, are not willing to just sort of go with the flow. That's almost their defining characteristic. So it's interesting you picked those two books that were defining for you.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. Well, and maybe that influenced some entrepreneurial spirit, but I think that came more, necessity is the mother of invention, and that's where most of the great things in my life have come through what looks like a hard thing that then was actually just pushing me to grow and become something that better. And the entrepreneurship piece, I think that just knowing like for whatever reason, I just do things differently. And I had
I love it.
so many jobs before. I quit like literally 30 different jobs or something. So from 16 or 15 until I was 22 or so. And I think that some point people like me just go, well, I guess I'll just start my own thing because I don't know how to follow anybody
Can't work
else's
for,
rules.
yeah. Well, and it could be that you were looking for your mountain. We use the analogy a lot with the kids and even inside of Prenda where we're saying, look, everybody to find real meaning and purpose, you really do need a big mountain, something you're climbing, whatever that looks like. And I'm not here to tell people what it is. Like, it doesn't have to get acclaim from the broader world. It's just definitely not measured in terms of, Instagram followers or dollars or any of these things, but to have something you're really striving for is the value we call dare greatly, which is of course borrowing from Theodore Roosevelt, but it's this idea of like climbing a mountain. And one of the things we talk about is you can climb your mountain and recognize that it's the wrong mountain and change mountains. So for you to do that 30 times, I'd love for us to switch gears and just tell this story of Solly Baby. I'm sure you've told this so many times, but it's a beautiful thing that you've done, and I'm sure it feels like a wild ride. Maybe put an education spin on it, because in some ways this was your graduate program, right? On top of all the other, the maybe less of a great match with school, but this seems to be a personalized, tailored education just for you. I'm sure it was the hardest thing you've ever done. And, if you can kind of talk about that experience for our listeners, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, my sister Liz, who sent Pride and Prejudice, and she has a master's in education. She's really into alternative education, but she kept telling me at the beginning of Solly Baby, this baby carrier company I started, when I would get really discouraged or, felt like it failing or whatever, she'd say, "This is your master's program." At the time that I started Solly Baby, I'd applied to a master's degree program at the University of Utah for a master's in education, and I was like, I'm either going to start a business or I'm going to get my master's. And I felt, more called to start this business. And so she would remind me of that. And it was really helpful to sometimes we want things so much faster than they come. But you need that period of learning in any project. But Solly Baby really started again, just making necessity being the mother of invention. I made this baby carrier wrap for my second baby when I was pregnant with him, Solly, and I had just picked up some fabric from the fabric district in LA. I was living in Utah at the time. My husband was at the U, and I made a wrap for myself and my friend Heather, who was pregnant with her second. And I didn't know I'd done anything, that I thought I was just being frugal. But my sister-in-law came over and she was wearing her baby in a wrap and she felt mine and she's like, this is way, way better than mine. It's so much lighter weight. And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never used another wrap. I really loved baby wearing. It saved me with my first baby who was really colicky. And so then the wheels just started turning. And I think that, to have, take a look at this through an educational lens, I think it's that curiosity, which really that's what kills me with any form of education. I think that should be the test is what does it do to your child's curiosity, especially in these younger years? And if it is not amplifying their curiosity, if you don't see them becoming more curious, it's like curiosity is like that light growing bigger in them. And when the curiosity it is a dimming of the spirit. Not that they shouldn't have challenges and, go through those times where it's hard and they have to pull through. But overall, their engagement, their interest, I think is just such a good litmus for where they are like truly academically, truly in their intellectual growth. But, yeah, that curiosity really served me well in the early days of Solly Baby because I just I just call it throwing noodles at the wall phase of just like, what's gonna stick, I wanted to have some kind of side hustle job that I could help support our family while my husband was in school, and it's like this whole internet, so Instagram had just it hadn't even come out, I don't think, when I first started, but in that first year or so, I could see the potential. Blogging was a thing. I could see the potential of these platforms and I had a lot of friends using them. And so I just, I was like, maybe I'll be a blogger. Maybe I'll do surveys online. That was a good one. Got some gift cards. And then, made this baby wrap and I was like, Etsy, I think Etsy, let's just play with this. And so bought a Craigslist serger for $50 and taught myself how to use it. I knew how to sew, but started making these wraps and putting them on Etsy and could barely sell them for $20. Went to these handmade local markets in Utah and found that no one wants to buy baby wrap at a handmade market and then started working with bloggers and that, now what we call influencers, but they that was our growth, strategy that really worked, and a few years in, my husband came in, when he finished school, and instead of his JD MBA program he was gonna do, we started working together, and that really helped the business to grow and take off. It's our family business and project for 10 or 11 years, until
Amazing.
2021 when we sold the majority share.
Sold it and got to meet all kinds of interesting people along the way. And I think you would say the most special of it all is you were helping mothers be close to their babies. It's something I know you're passionate about. I love the focus on curiosity in the story, Elle. I mean, it's exactly what's missing, I think, for so many people. I have this experience when my kids were still, doing kind of traditional school. My son was in fifth grade, and I have a physics background. I studied like nuclear physics. And so they invited me in. Somehow my son mentioned this to the teacher, and we're going to do a lesson about Newton's laws, and it's a physics thing. And so I got to come and be the guest speaker, and I made this simulation that let them like play around with the laws of motion. And it was this like, for me, the whole goal was to get as much fire burning as we can. And this is a metaphor that goes back to Plutarch, that's just like get the fire to burn, and that was my goal, right? And what happened in the room was the teacher kept, I think she felt like this was her job, right? She kept doing these like clapping drills, like to kind of restore order and get kids to be quiet. And there were like 3 or 4 kids that were really into it, but you could tell she didn't like these kids. Like they were the bad kids or whatever. And so they were engaging like in the most positive, productive way you could possibly engage, asking questions and offering answers and thinking out loud. And I'm loving it. And she's literally like scorning these kids in front of me. And I'm thinking, oh no, like it's the exact opposite. And you flip it now, going back to Plutarch, he said, it's either a fire to be kindled or it's a vessel to be filled. Like you're pouring water in a cup. And she was pouring water on these little tiny fires, and it just hurt my heart. Again, I don't blame her. I think she was doing what she felt like was her job to kind of maintain order in a room full of squirmy, fifth graders. But if your goal is to ignite curiosity, to get that spark, to get the fire burning, it was the wrong thing to do, and it just felt, you could feel it. It was palpable in the room. So I love that your whole master's degree in entrepreneurship was led by curiosity, not just about how to sew a carrier probably, but how to get followers on Instagram and how to open your shop on Etsy and how to do, like, I'm sure you had a million different things you had to figure out how to do.
Yeah, it's all just problem solving. Like I think that that's most of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You want a product that you believe in, that you care about, but then beyond that, like you just want to solve problems all day. And if you do, then you'll probably be a good entrepreneur.
Do you just want to solve problems all day? Yeah. I mean, look, I liked math. That's basically what math was. Just give me problems. I also liked video games as a kid, and that was a lot of what video games are too. It's just solve problems all the time. Let's talk about
True.
education, because now your kids are getting older, but give us your story of, you said you've tried all the things, you've gotten all the reactions from the other parents around you. We'll talk a little bit about where you landed, but can you walk through a little bit of your journey and just share, what did you try and what did you find in the experience?
Well, preschool is easy in that it just needs to be fun, right? Like I think that a lot of preschools get it right. It's just like kindergarten, it should be this, children's garden, and most preschools feel that way for the most part. But coming into kindergarten, that's of course where the rubber meets the road for most of us as parents. And we were so lucky in that we found a group of homeschooling moms in San Diego who had started a little private school. They've been homeschooling for years, and they were like, you know what? Let's just meet at a church and we'll be the teachers and take in other kids. It'll be helpful for our kids. So, I mean, it was essentially, a micro school, but there were, I think, how many? 20 kids that first year, 2 classes. And it was an amazing experience for my daughter. It was so much of what we wanted. It was just a few days a week. Then we moved to Oregon for a few years, and in this small town, not as many resources. So we did the public school, and that was it was a good reminder of why I wanted to do alternative ed. But I do think, I mean, I will say, like, you're saying this teacher that was, pouring water on these fires because she had to just classroom management was the main goal with this many kids. And that's kind of how a lot of classrooms have to survive, except for some really excellent teachers, which there are. I mean, thank goodness for them. But we did not have that experience. But it was, there's some value to learning those skills and how to be a part of, this bigger system in classroom. I just don't think we need to dedicate, 13 years to it for our kids. Anyway, moving from Oregon, we came back, went to that school and back to this private school. And what happened, there are a few other switches along the way, a few other moves for us. And then but during, when COVID hit, this is probably our biggest shift. When COVID hit, they were like, these teachers were like, this is gonna be too hard to keep it afloat. Online is the last thing in the world, like that, for this community, how we envision this. And so we can't all be isolated like this, learning and just trying to teach you this way. And so we were like, well, we can I think we can just take our favorite teacher then and we had moved to this property. Our family had moved to this property on 3 acres, and we have this tack room barn, and we were already redoing it for a studio for Solly Baby, but I was like, "You know what? This would make an even better classroom." And so two friends from the school, they really spearheaded this project, Jen and Aaron, and they approached this teacher, Jolene Rios, and said, "Would you wanna do kind of a one-room schoolhouse at Elle's house?" And she was like, "That's always been my dream, actually." Her kids are grown and she's just this dedicated teacher. And so we just that fall, we started it up here with two classes that met on two different days and mixed ages. And that was amazing. We did that for 2 years and it grew so big, actually like outgrew this space. We added a second classroom, added another teacher, my husband's aunt, who's also was like just amazing. And so they moved to another campus. I think that this is like what I wish more homeschooling parents would hear all the time. Like the change of things, it sounds like things are just going wrong all the time and nothing is stable, but it's like, it's actually just the flow of things. Like to me, I'm like, this all makes perfect sense. This was a perfect 2 years here. It outgrew this space. They found a new space. And then the families that like it grew so big that those families closer to the beach, they have their campus. And then the moms just kind of came back to run this campus out here. And so then we just kind of reorganized again. And now for the last 2 years, we've been, there are 8 families and and it's looked different every year. We just say, what are the needs? What do we need this year? What kind of community? What are your kids needing? And while most of us are doing core subjects at home, we come together for community and for art and for a lot of play. And we had a school newspaper,
Wow.
just fun things like that. So that's where we are now. My older kids have gone on to different charter schools and now community college and, just looks different.
It's amazing. And I love your emphasis on, yeah, I think we're conditioned to think in terms of checklists and syllabi. And it's like, it goes this and then this and then this. And if you're off that track, then everything's gone wrong. But I think those of us who've experienced life know that that's not how life works. Even if you take a more traditional track in a workplace, there's lots of lateral, horizontal, forward, back, all over the place. So the phrase from a book I like called The Startup of You, really encouraging everybody to take a personal entrepreneurship approach. And they say there was an escalator, maybe at one point in the past, you got on the escalator and it just goes in a predictable way, but the escalator is jammed, is the kind of thesis of this book. Like, don't get on the escalator, or if you're on it, get off and find your way through. And this is not,
Oh, good.
speaking to people that are pulling their kids out of school, but it really does apply. The same logic applies for your kids as well. Well, this
I
is great.
love
Can you
that.
talk
That's
about
such a good
some of
analogy.
the Yeah, you said you had to learn things along the way. Can you talk about some of the big learnings as you've been involved in Orchard School and as you're reacting to the needs of the students that have come up, and I'm sure supporting these great teachers that you've found. What are some of the, I don't know if misconceptions is the right way to phrase it, but ways you thought about things in the past that you now think about them differently? Just share some of your learnings as somebody who's done this now for a few years.
Think that I mean, oh gosh, so many good learnings. I would say you don't have to agree on everything when you come together with other families. Like, and it's better that you don't. You don't have to agree on the same exact curriculum for every subject and everything and like your politics or whatever. You need to have enough overlap, but also, I think it's a beautiful thing to get more diversity in our communities and groups. And it's hard to do because, of course, just like finds like. Um, but I think that what has worked the best is when these families have been able to come together with just love for our kids, love for keeping their spirits alive, just a commitment and dedication to that. And and just some basic philosophy, and that's enough. And then I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've seen a lot of families struggle to find community. And I think it's like, well, you're looking too hard to find yourself. And that's probably not even the best thing. And
Yeah.
your kids don't have to be best friends with the other kids, and that's actually a good thing too, right? Like, you just learn to work in communities that are a little more organic and natural in that way. So I think that's been one learning.
What would you say are the main things? Like, the things that matter versus the things that don't matter. I think if those of us, and I'm sure lots of people listening are following the big debates in American education today. It's often like which types of books and which types of indoctrination, and people are talking about all of that. In some ways, it's like, yeah, I understand because they're my kids and I want to protect them. But I also have this sense that, like, I'm going to teach my kids the things that are most important. So, what are the places where I can, maybe say, look, let's build community despite differences. And you mentioned just loving kids and wanting what's best for them. Does that go to another level for you guys? Or is it sort of like, what does the website say for Orchard School? I guess is maybe one way to put it.
Yeah, if we had one, I think it would say, I think it would say, oh man, I wish I had our like mission statement that the kids came up with in here. It's in the other room. But I think there's an adventurous spirit. That's a commonality that we all have is a love for learning, a love for adventure, for doing hard things. I think we're all trying to raise resilient kids, playful, curious kids. And like, when it comes to math, we all have different opinions on math. And
Like, is
so
it good or
we
is it
have a
bad?
actually, yeah, even to that level, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has different levels of concern about math, of like, some are like, look, this is an outdated thing. We shouldn't be spending this much time on it.
Mm,
And others are like, I'm married to a scientist. Yeah, we really care. We really value math in this house. And both make sense, right?
right.
I think that you can respect that by saying, instead of like teaching one math approach, we are going to have a math lab. And that's what we do is we have math lab where then the parents, we step in with our kids. We're working with them one-on-one during that time, or 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. And that's how we approach that. But I think just don't say, this family doesn't belong in this community uh because we don't read the
They're
exact same books or
anti-math.
whatever. It's
Yeah,
like, maybe
yeah.
let's choose one and the other.
Right. That's beautiful. Thanks for that picture, because I think it does help to cement like a visual for how this can work. And just having something that binds you together. I think you guys have such a powerful purpose. And I know you didn't read it verbatim, but just having a mission statement, I love that the kids made it. And it's like, this is who we are. This is what we're about. Can you share any stories? I mean, speaking of the kids, just examples of what we call, at Prenda, we call it empowered learners. We're really looking for somebody, an empowered learner, in my opinion, makes a decision to learn. So that's connected to that fire that we've been talking about. But they also kind of go the next step, which is they refine the skill of a learner. I think you can hear in your personal story an empowered learner because it's somebody who's curious, who's figuring it out, who's climbing mountains, who's, daily approaching this behavior of learning and expanding herself. And what we're trying to do for kids with Prenda is help every kid get to that way of being in the world. And I would love to hear, it sounds like you're doing something very similar. Can you share examples of just times where you've seen kids kind of becoming that empowered learner? I mean, to
Yeah,
put you on the spot.
I love it when kids when they come up with the plan and they're like, "Hey, we are doing this." 2 examples. One, my now 11-year-old last year, or I guess it was just last fall, we had seen the Broadway play Wicked, and she was really into it. And she was like, "Hey, we're gonna do a school play. It's called Wicked." And she printed off the script. They had auditions. All the moms are like, "Wait, what's happening?" And she's like, "We're gonna need extra rehearsal time." And the best, oh my gosh, what was it? The best part with that is, and we had family over, and my husband's aunt said, "So what are you into right now, Frances? How's school going?" And she said, "Great, we're doing a production." And she said, "Oh, really? Like the adults is it an adult play or like the kids are doing the play?" And she was like, "It's a play." She was so offended by like this distinction of like adult or children. She was like, yeah, I mean, the kids are doing it, but it's obviously a real production. I don't get what you're getting at, you know?
I love that.
She had I mean, just, and everyone gathered
Yeah.
around and they had problems within it. They figured it out. Like, and do you know what's funny? They never actually performed the play, I realized. It was like at some point it petered off and I was like, "It's totally fine." That was a solid 2 months of serious engagement and learning that they did to even get to that point. And that's fine. Like, I don't know. I think it's easy with kids to be really obsessed with the results, like so results driven in a way that does not actually match at all where and how much our kids have been learning and where they are. Anyway, I would say the second example,
It's a great story.
of that would be last year. We had there's a book called Roxaboxen. You're in Arizona. Have you read the book Roxaboxen, the children's book?
I don't think so. Maybe I need to check this out. Is it a kid's book?
Yeah, it's a really good one. My husband grew up reading it, and these kids out in the desert, they kind of make their own. It's just a picture book, and they make their own little world and like a store and like little village out of rocks and sticks, and they're selling goods. I mean, just a really elaborate game of house. And so we said behind the barn here will be their Roxaboxen area, and you just get. We said only like natural material so it didn't become a junkyard. Still kind of became a junkyard to the naked eye, but in their minds it was, they had this whole town. And so I remember my daughter Hazel was 7 at the time. She was the sheriff. Like they created their whole like form of government back there. And she was like, "Yeah, well, Holden's been in jail for the last bit because he keeps breaking the rules." And it was just so fascinating to hear how they all took on different roles. There was a cupcake shop. And from the very youngest to the 11-year-olds, they all had a place in this world that they created. I mean, you can't actually, put on paper or put into a graph or like
Yeah.
how much they learned from that experience. You just can't.
And the authorship, the self-authorship and the agency involved. I mean, one of the things you're seeing more of is people are programmatically creating these things like a whole business fair or a business, a program, right? And they teach kids important lessons about the way business works and you get life skills, but it's all very curated, structured, almost spoon-fed to them. And what you're describing is it's almost like the counter version of that, which is completely created by them. And they walk away with this sense of like, we did this. And they know no one else would know. I think from the outside, like you say, it looks like a junkyard. It looks like chaos. It looks like kids just pretending. So there's this dismissiveness that the snobbery of the academic world would say, oh, that's not learning. But if you actually get into it with them and you see what's going on, they're having to solve problems in what the education writers would call in a constructivist way, like they're building it from the ground up. And there's great power in that, because what that does is it gets back to this idea of, you look around at the world around you after you've graduated. And I think most people assume that the world just exists the way it is. And there's a small number of people that look at that world. And this is now channeling like a Steve Jobs quote that talks about this, where you can look at the world and you can say, people made this, right? The reason it is this way is because somebody like me made it this way. And that means that I can make it different, or I can change or create or add to it or affect it. And that's a superpower, just to be able to see the world that way, especially in a world where I think so many of us are approaching things very passively. Anyway, so I love it. I love both of those stories. Thank you for sharing, and thanks for doing the great work you're doing. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about other parents. I'm sure word's out in your community in Southern California. People have heard about this. They're aware of this. Are you just getting like your door beaten down with interest? Are people like, I want to do it? Like what kind of response are you seeing? And what do you say to other parents who, want to do something like this?
I have had a lot of moms reach out who've wanted to start something similar in other areas, and they have. I know of at least two other, if not three other kind of barn schools that have started like this one. And I think that the maybe the biggest hurdle I'm seeing is finding a space. We're really lucky to have this space that works, and it's not, but we are limited even here. This is not a huge room. The next room over is, they're both like 10 by 15 or something. They're small spaces, but we're in California, so we're like, get outside always. Um, but so we have had a lot of interest from other families, and we try to just open our doors as much as possible, but it is just hard because of space, and we want to be thoughtful of neighbors and things. And that's a real thing. We did outgrow the space before. And so, there's another school, and they were able to, one of the amazing families there, able to buy this old church and properties and investment and make it so that they have a bigger space there, and they're absolutely thriving. It's so cool to see that. It's so cool because, even though we're so like looks like this big breakup of the school, you could frame it that way of like, oh, there's schoolhouse and there's orchard house, but it didn't feel like that at all. It's like we outgrew the space, and it just very organically came about. We're all just like, look, nobody is here trying to make millions of dollars making any money. We're all spending money to do this. We're all just here for our kids. And so what's the best thing that's going to work right now for, our kids? And then that's just an extension of our community, which is a really cool thing. We still
Yeah,
get together with
it's
those
beautiful.
families sometimes. So it's cool.
It's beautiful. And it's fun for the kids to be part of a community like that too, that they feel some ownership in as well. They wrote the mission statement, this is my school. Yeah, if somebody called you from Oregon, from your old neighborhood, or from Utah where you used to live, or Texas, I think you have roots in Texas. If somebody called you from one of these places and they're like, "Oh, what do I do? I need exactly that." What are you telling them?
I say just start small and people will come. Start small and people will come. It doesn't matter if you don't need to start with some big space. We started, with this one little room that could hold 10 kids, maybe 12, and then we went from there. If it's at a library and then you go to the park, that's fine. Like it's not about the space. People get really I love beautiful places and spaces, and it's fun to make this like, one room schoolhouse vision come to life. And that's just like, I do love that. But at the same time, that is not what makes it magical. Is it's nature and it's people. And if you have and good nourishing books, and you really don't need that much. And so I would just say start small. And I've had so many people say, but I don't know other families. I don't know enough like-minded families. And again, even one of the schools in Northern California that started from this, I think she was like, I'll be the teacher. She's a certified teacher. And so she said, it'll just be my kids this year, but this is a thing. And then they're able to grow from there. Now they have multiple classrooms. Again, there are a lot of kids out there and families who are struggling, and they need these other options, and they'll find you.
We need 1,000 times as many as we currently have, and that's something we talk about a lot too. Is just how can we get more? We say more micro schools in the world that each one can look different. They can kind of have a different vibe, but for them to be creating that option and hopefully empowering learners the way we've been talking about. That's the dream. So if you're listening to Elle right now, do it. Don't wait on a big expensive space. Get your group together, get a copy of Anne of Green Gables and go to the park, and you're taking a huge step already.
And it's amazing what that you guys are offering though, this kind of basic structure that will help support that startup phase because it can feel really overwhelming. And it can feel like a lot. And so to have something that gives you some of that basic framework like Prenda does, I think that is really special. And I'm so grateful for what you guys do to support families in that way, to just give it that kickstart because it's not my full-time job. I have only so many hours that I can devote to this. I also work and, that's the reality for most families. And don't try to do it all and don't think that you have to teach it all. Like people will be shocked at how little I personally teach my kids.
Yeah,
A lot of people.
you can be responsible without doing it all yourself. And I think that's the difference is get in the headspace. I think whether they're in a traditional classroom or you're creating your very own micro school, you want to be recognizing like this is my child and this is basically foundational to their life and their success and how they're gonna see themselves in the world. So I want to be in it. I want to own it, but that's totally fine too. We call it kind of hire out, right? You hire people by sending your kid to their school. You're hiring them to help you with their education, which you're in charge of. So I love that advice. And thank you for the kind words about Prenda as well. I get inspired every time I meet somebody. Oftentimes it is that moment where they're kind of standing on the edge of the cliff, ready to like jump out into the water below. And it feels scary, and they've never done it before. Maybe they're a former teacher, but they've never run a business, or maybe they have some entrepreneurial experience, but they've never really done education, or maybe neither, right? And they're just kind of like, I think this is what my kids need, and I believe there are others that need it, and how can I do it? And there is a step into the darkness there that we try to hold their hand and help them through a little bit. But really great to have examples like yours out there for them. And so, yeah, if you haven't seen Elle's work, can you give us kind of a pointer? Is the best place to go to your personal Instagram? And then I want to ask you about Down the Well, which is just a really inspiring movement that you're starting. I think you're still pretty early in that work as well. So give our listeners where they should go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing.
Well, that's really kind of you. I think if you just go, yeah, to my Instagram, which is Elle Rowley. I also have a Substack. I write a little more there. I think like most moms, we're all trying to spend less time on social media. And so I don't post a ton anywhere. And so what I do share, I try to make it really meaningful. Because I think, yeah, we could all do well to spend less time online. But down the Well is a YouTube channel and podcast that I started just a few months ago. It's been in the works since last fall, but we just launched it a few months ago, and it's been really what it's about is supporting mothers through motherhood, but finding transformation in their motherhood. So often we look at mothering and parenting as really this self-sacrificing thing that we do for in service to our kids, but we miss the part that through that self-sacrifice and through that service, we actually just like, it's better to give than to receive. Like we have the potential through that process to really know ourselves better, to become higher, I don't want to say better selves, but just like to reach our own
Yeah.
potential. And I think the world is telling moms that motherhood requires you actually become smaller and you give up your potential. And that just like absolutely breaks my soul. And you see it in how few people want to have kids now. I mean, 47% of young people are opting out of being parents, and it's even higher for women. And I think that just represents a huge gap in narrative, and whether that's making it so women don't want to become moms, or the moms are missing the potential of that transformation, and by leaning into it harder. And I don't mean being a martyr, but I mean really recognizing recognizing the ways that it can move you, and the ways that, like, being more, it's not just about being more present, but it's about falling down the well, this proverbial well that Lisa Marchiano's Jungian analyst lays out, this mother's hero's journey so beautifully, and that's a major part of it. It mirrors Joseph Campbell's journey of going out. She's like, women, the heroine's journey is going down. And I don't think that we have fully realized that as mothers. And through this podcast and show, I just really am hoping to empower women to choose motherhood, to double down in it, to lean into that, and to find a lot of joy in it through those down the well hard moments, knowing that on the other side of that, you are going to come out as the butterfly every time if you can approach it in a way that will aid in your growth with humility, open-heartedness, and curiosity, and these good qualities that are sure to bring more treasures and more light and goodness in your life. So that's like, it's a lofty goal, but I've had a lot of fun just studying and digging into it and sharing what I've learned and, along my own journey. But that's what I'm doing.
It's powerful and beautiful, and you've I think pitched it well, because I have looked at some of it in preparation for this conversation, but now I'm ready to go obsess over all of it. And this idea of kind of an alternate, a version of the hero's journey, which I'm also obsessed with, and just to think about what that can look like. And personally, we're experiencing this too, where our kids are growing up, and it's like, who are we? So much of who we are is tied up in our relation to our children. Now it's like, are we emerging the other side of this journey a different person, like you would? Anyway, so many questions, and I'm going to be reading, and I may be following up with my own personal questions for you, but I'll try to not bug you too much. Well, Rowley, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time to just chat with us. Thank you for the work you've done and that you continue to do, and just the goodness that you're bringing into the world. I hope people are listening and just hearing in you, this courage to take these actions, take these steps, and be there. And if you're thinking about it for kids in your community, your own kids or other people's kids, I hope you'll take a minute and give this thought, right? And say, I could do this. I could start a microschool. I could contribute in my community as well. So with that, thank you so much for taking the time. And I wish you the very best in everything you're doing going forward.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
The Kindled podcast is brought to you by Prenda. Prenda makes it easy to start and run an amazing microschool based on all the ideas we talk about here on the Kindled podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at PrendaLearn. And if you'd like more information about starting a microschool, just go to prenda.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep kindling.